In the heart of a gleaming Miami penthouse, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city's glittering skyline like a living tapestry of lights and shadows, a billionaire lay motionless on a velvet sofa, his breathing slow and deliberate, each inhale and exhale measured to perfection. The air was heavy with the scent of expensive leather, mingling subtly with the faint trace of sea salt drifting in from the open balcony doors, carried on the warm evening breeze that whispered secrets of the ocean below. The penthouse itself was a marvel of modern architecture, with sleek lines of chrome and glass reflecting the vibrant hues of the sunset, casting elongated shadows across the marble floors that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. To anyone who might have been watching, though no one was, for Victor Langston ensured his privacy with the utmost vigilance, he appeared to be deeply asleep, lost in the realms of dreams that only the ultra-wealthy could afford. But Victor's mind was razor-sharp, a finely tuned instrument honed by decades of cutthroat business deals and strategic maneuvers in the tech world, where one wrong move could topple empires. His senses were attuned to every nuance in the sprawling apartment, the distant hum of the city's traffic far below, the soft tick of a designer clock on the wall, and, most importantly, the faint giggles and the soft patter of footsteps echoing down the hall, a sound that didn't belong in his meticulously ordered world, a world governed by rules and boundaries as rigid as the steel beams supporting his towering domain. It was the daughter of his black maid, a girl barely 9 years old, moving freely in a space where her presence was barely tolerated, let alone welcomed. Victor had orchestrated this moment with the precision of a chess grandmaster, pretending to sleep to test her, to probe the depths of what he perceived as inherent untrustworthiness, a belief rooted in the prejudices he had absorbed like osmosis. From his upbringing in the segregated pockets of the American South, he expected mischief, perhaps the pilfering of a small trinket from his collection of rare artifacts, or some other breach of the invisible lines drawn by wealth, race, and social hierarchy. Lines that, in his mind, were as immutable as the laws of physics. But as he lay there, his heart began to pound not from the anticipation of confirmation, but from the unexpected act unfolding before him, an act so pure and unassuming that it would freeze him in place, suspending time in that opulent room and leave the world stunned by its ripple effect, a ripple that would extend far beyond the confines of his penthouse and into the broader tapestry of human connection and redemption. The penthouse was more than just a home. It was a fortress, a symbol of Victor's ascent from humble beginnings to the pinnacle of success. Every detail had been curated to reflect his status. The abstract paintings by renowned artists adorning the walls, each one acquired at auctions where bids soared into the millions. The custom furniture imported from Italy, upholstered in fabrics that felt like clouds under one's touch. The state-of-the-art smart systems that controlled lighting, temperature, and security with a mere voice command. Yet, amidst this opulence, there was an underlying sterility, a lack of warmth that mirrored Victor's own emotional landscape, scarred by loss and hardened by years of isolation. His late wife had once filled these spaces with life. Flowers in vases, laughter echoing through the halls. But since her passing 5 years ago, the penthouse had become a mausoleum of memories, guarded fiercely against intrusion. Cassandra, the maid, had been in his employ for nearly 2 years. A reliable figure who moved through the apartment like a shadow, her presence felt only in the immaculate cleanliness she left behind. She was a black woman in her late 30s, with a quiet dignity that Victor never acknowledged, her story one of resilience forged in the fires of systemic challenges. Born in a small town in Georgia, she had migrated to Miami in search of better opportunities, only to find herself navigating the same racial barriers that had plagued her ancestors. Her daughter, Nia, was the light in her otherwise demanding life, a child full of wonder and creativity, whose wide eyes took in the world, with an innocence that belied the hardships they faced. Nia often accompanied her mother to work during school holidays, confined to the staff quarters, a small functional room tucked away from the main living areas, equipped with basic amenities, but devoid of the luxury that defined the rest of the penthouse. Victor's test was not born out of mere curiosity. It was a manifestation of deeper-seated biases, prejudices that had been nurtured by a lifetime of privilege. He had grown up in an era where segregation was not just legal, but socially enforced, where stories of the other were laced with suspicion and fear. In his boardrooms, conversations often veered into territories of exclusion, with colleagues nodding in agreement over policies that subtly, or not so subtly, perpetuated racial divides in hiring, housing, and beyond. Victor saw himself as a self-made man, blind to the advantages his skin color afforded him, and thus viewed those like Cassandra and Nia through a lens distorted by stereotype. Would the child steal? Would she disrupt the order he so cherished? These questions swirled in his mind as he feigned slumber, his body still but his thoughts racing like a high-speed train. As the minutes ticked by, the sounds grew closer. The soft shuffle of small feet on the plush carpet, the rustle of paper, perhaps a sketchbook being opened. Victor's eyelids fluttered imperceptibly, allowing him a sliver of vision without betraying his wakefulness. What he witnessed was not the act of defiance he anticipated, but something far more profound, a gesture that pierced the armor of his preconceptions and planted the seed of change. Nia, with her curly hair tied back in colorful ribbons, approached the coffee table where a framed photograph of Victor's late wife sat, a relic of happier times. She placed a small drawing beside it, a child's rendition of a rainbow arching. Over a united family, colors blending seamlessly without regard for boundaries. The simplicity of the act, the unadulterated kindness behind it, hit Victor like a tidal wave, freezing him in a moment of raw vulnerability. This was no test of character for Nia, it had become one for him. The hook of this story lies not just in the suspense of the moment, but in the broader implications it holds for society. In a world rife with racial tensions, where acts of prejudice play out in boardrooms, streets, and homes, what happens when a single, unexpected gesture challenges the status quo? Victor's frozen state was more than physical. It was the crystallization of a paradigm shift, a stunning realization that would echo through his life and beyond, inviting viewers to ponder their own biases and the power of empathy to stun even the most fortified hearts. Victor Langston, at 60 years old, was a titan of Miami's tech industry, his fortune built on cutting-edge software that powered global corporations, from Fortune 500 companies to emerging startups hungry for innovation. His penthouse, perched atop a glass tower that pierced the Miami skyline like a needle, was a monument to his success, a sprawling expanse of over 10,000 square feet filled with modern art and sleek furniture that screamed exclusivity and power. The walls were adorned with pieces from artists like Basquiat and Warhol, each acquisition a testament to his discerning taste and bottomless pockets. The floors, made of imported Italian marble, gleamed under recessed lighting that could be adjusted to mimic the warmth of a sunset or the cool blue of moonlight. Every corner of the penthouse was designed for comfort and control, with smart home systems integrating seamlessly to anticipate his needs. Curtains drawing at dusk, coffee brewing at dawn, security cameras monitoring every angle with unblinking eyes. Raised in a world of old money and older biases, Victor viewed the help, particularly those who didn't share his skin color, with a cold distance, a product of his upbringing in a segregated enclave of the 1970s South. His childhood home in Alabama had been a bastion of privilege, where servants were seen but not heard, their lives separate and subordinate. This worldview had carried into his adult life, influencing his business decisions and personal interactions. In board meetings, he often championed algorithms that, unintentionally or not, reinforced racial disparities in data processing, such as facial recognition software that performed poorly on darker skin tones. He dismissed concerns as overreactions, clinging to the belief that meritocracy ruled supreme, blind to the systemic barriers that skewed the playing field. His life was one of control, where every detail, from his tailored suits, crafted by Savile, row tailors to his staff's schedules meticulously planned by personal assistants, was orchestrated to perfection. Victor's days began at 5 a.m., with a rigorous workout in his private gym, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, followed by a breakfast of organic fruits and artisanal coffee. By 7 a.m., he was in his home office, a room lined with floor-to-ceiling, bookshelves filled with tomes on economics, technology, and philosophy, though many remained unread, serving more as decor than inspiration. His evenings were spent at exclusive events, galas, yacht parties, or dinners with fellow magnates, where conversations revolved around mergers, acquisitions, and the latest market trends. Among his employees was Cassandra, a black single mother in her late 30s, who cleaned his home with quiet precision, her movements efficient and unobtrusive. She was invisible to Victor, her existence reduced to the spotless surfaces she left behind, the fresh linens on his king-sized bed, the polished silverware in the dining room that seated 20, but was rarely used. Cassandra's story was one of quiet endurance. She had left her hometown in Georgia after her husband's untimely death, seeking better prospects in Miami's bustling economy. She worked multiple jobs to support Nia, her daughter, dreaming of a future where education could break the cycle of poverty and prejudice. Her days at the penthouse started at noon, after dropping Nia at school or, during breaks, bringing her along to save on childcare costs. Cassandra's uniform, a simple black dress with a white apron, was a uniform of subservience, a reminder of the roles society assigned based on race and class. Nia, a bright-eyed 9-year-old with a knack for curiosity, often tagged along during school breaks, her small frame darting through the penthouse's vast spaces like a bird in a cage too large. She had skin like polished mahogany, eyes that sparkled with intelligence, and a smile that could light up the darkest room. Nia's world was one of imagination. She loved drawing, inspired by the colorful murals in her neighborhood, and dreamed of becoming an artist who painted stories of hope. At home in their modest apartment in a less affluent part of Miami, Nia and Cassandra shared evenings filled with stories of their heritage, tales of civil rights heroes like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, reminders that resilience ran in their blood. Victor's rules were clear. Nia was to stay out of sight, confined to the staff quarters, a reminder of the racial and class divides he upheld without question. The staff quarters were a stark contrast to the rest of the penthouse. A small room with a twin bed, a mini fridge, and a bathroom, functional but devoid of luxury. Nia spent her time there drawing on scrap paper, her subjects ranging from fantastical creatures to scenes of family unity. Yet Nia's irrepressible spirit, her humming of old spirituals passed down from her grandmother, her tendency to sketch on scraps of paper found in the recycling, began to pierce the penthouse's sterile silence, stirring something Victor couldn't name. Occasionally he would catch a glimpse of her from afar, her laughter echoing faintly, and feel a twinge of annoyance mixed with an unexplained curiosity. The stage was set for a test born of prejudice, but it would lead to a moment that challenged everything he thought he knew. As the summer months progressed, Miami's heat intensified, mirroring the rising tensions in the city. News reports spoke of racial injustices, police brutality incidents, discriminatory housing practices, and economic disparities that left communities, like Cassandra's, struggling. Victor, from his ivory tower, viewed these as distant problems, not touching his world. But in his penthouse, the lines were blurring. Nia, bored in the staff quarters, would venture out when her mother was busy, exploring the library with its shelves of books she couldn't yet fully understand but whose pictures captivated her. She found the photo of Victor's late wife, Eleanor, a woman whose kind eyes seemed to speak of compassion. Eleanor had been the heart of Victor's life, a philanthropist who advocated for social causes, but her death from cancer had left him embittered. 1. Day, Nia left her first drawing, a simple flower, beside the photo, a child's way of offering comfort to a stranger's memory. This act, unseen by Victor at first, set in motion a chain of events that would culminate in his test. He noticed the drawings accumulating, small tokens of innocence in his otherwise orderly space. Instead of appreciation, it fueled his suspicion. What is she up to? He wondered, his biases whispering tales of ulterior motives. He decided to pretend to sleep, to observe, to confirm what he knew to be true. Little did he know, this setup would expose not Nia's character, but his own. Flaws, building curiosity in the viewer as the story unfolded into deeper layers of emotional tension and societal reflection. The setup of this narrative delves deep into the characters' backgrounds, painting a vivid picture of their worlds colliding. Victor's privilege is contrasted with Cassandra's struggles, highlighting the racial injustices that permeate everyday life. As curiosity builds, the audience is drawn in, eager to see how these divides will be bridged or widened, setting the stage for the rising action where tension escalates. As summer draped Miami in humid heat, the penthouse became a microcosm of the city's broader tensions. News of racial profiling incidents filled the airwaves, dominating evening broadcasts. With images of protests and impassioned speeches, and Victor's own biases grew sharper, influenced by the echo chamber of his social circle. He had overheard colleagues at a gala, held in a lavish ballroom overlooking Biscayne Bay, joking about keeping certain people out of their gated communities, remarks that echoed his own unspoken beliefs, reinforcing the walls he had built around his heart and mind. The gala itself was a spectacle of excess, crystal chandeliers sparkling like stars, tables laden with gourmet delicacies from around the world, and guests in designer gowns and tuxedos mingling with the elite. Victor, glass of aged scotch in hand, nodded along, his laughter forced but his agreement genuine. At home, he noticed small changes. His prized crystal decanter slightly askew on the bar cart, a sketchbook left on a counter in the kitchen, signs of Nia's presence creeping into his ordered world like vines overtaking a manicured garden. Suspicion took root, fueled by stereotypes that painted her as a potential troublemaker, a child from the wrong background who couldn't be trusted. These thoughts consumed him during his solitary evenings as he sat on the balcony watching the city lights twinkle, the ocean waves crashing below in rhythmic fury. Victor's mind wandered to his past, to incidents where he had dismissed employees for minor infractions, often those who didn't fit his image of reliability, code for racial prejudice. Victor devised a plan to catch her in the act, pretending to sleep on the sofa during one of Cassandra's shifts, his phone set to record any misstep, hidden discreetly under a throw pillow. The sofa, a custom piece from Milan, was his favorite spot for reflection, its cushions molding to his form. Like a second skin, he practiced the pose in front of a mirror, ensuring his breathing was convincing, his eyes closed, but senses alert. Meanwhile, Nia, unaware of the scrutiny, found solace in the penthouse's vast library, a room Victor rarely entered, its shelves groaning under the weight of leather-bound volumes on history, science, and art. The library was a sanctuary of knowledge, with high ceilings, comfortable armchairs, and a ladder to reach the upper shelves. Nia pored over books about art and history, her small fingers tracing images of vibrant paintings by artists like Jacob Lawrence and Faith Ringgold, who depicted Black experiences with bold colors and powerful narratives, her imagination alight with stories her mother had shared about their ancestors' resilience. tales of slavery, emancipation, and the civil rights movement. Nia felt a connection to these figures, drawing inspiration for her own creations. One afternoon, she stumbled upon a photo of Victor's late wife, a kind-faced woman whose smile hinted at a warmth Victor had buried after her passing, the frame dust-free thanks to Cassandra's care. The photo sat on a side table, surrounded by books on philanthropy, Eleanor's passion, moved by an instinct she couldn't explain. Nia began leaving small drawings near the photo, simple sketches of flowers and stars, a child's gesture of connection in a world that often felt divided. These drawings were not random, they were thoughtful, incorporating elements from the books she read, like stars symbolizing hope from African folk tales or flowers representing growth amidst adversity. Cassandra, ever cautious, faced her own struggles. Victor's curt demands delivered via intercom, his insistence on checking her bags before she left each day, a humiliating ritual that made her feel like a criminal rather than an employee. The bag checks were a daily indignity, Victor rifling through her purse for security reasons, his eyes scanning for anything out of place. She endured it for Nia, biting back words of protest, her mind filled with thoughts of better days. The city's racial tensions mirrored these microaggressions, with protests erupting over discriminatory hiring practices in tech, a field Victor dominated. Crowds gathered in downtown Miami, chanting for equality, signs reading "Black Lives Matter" and "End Systemic Racism." Victor watched these on his massive flat-screen TV, dismissing them as disruptions, not recognizing his role in perpetuating the system. As he lay asleep, his trap set, the air grew thick with anticipation, each moment pulling the threads of prejudice and innocence closer to a breaking point. The day of the test arrived, the penthouse quiet except for the hum of the air. Conditioning. Cassandra was in the kitchen, preparing Victor's favorite meal, grilled salmon with asparagus, her movements precise. Nia, having finished her homework, ventured out, her sketchbook clutched under her arm. She passed by the living room, glancing at Victor's sleeping form, and continued to the library. There, she created her most elaborate drawing yet. 2 figures, one resembling Eleanor and the other a child like herself, holding hands under a rainbow. Satisfied, she tiptoed back, placing it beside the photo on the coffee table in front of the sofa. Victor's heart raced as he peeked through slit eyelids, expecting to see theft or mischief. Instead, he witnessed kindness, a gesture that challenged his worldview. The tension built as he struggled internally, his prejudices clashing with the evidence before him. Days prior, he had installed additional cameras, small devices hidden in plants and bookshelves, feeding live footage to his phone. Reviewing the footage later, he saw Nia's routine, reading, drawing, leaving gifts, not taking but giving. This discovery unsettled him, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths. The rising action intensifies as external events intrude. A major protest blocked traffic near the tower, sirens blaring, voices amplified through megaphones. Victor, from his vantage point, felt the world pressing in. At work, his company faced scrutiny for biased AI, a lawsuit alleging discrimination in job recommendations. Colleagues debated in emails, some defending the tech, others suggesting reforms. Victor, traditionally resistant, began to waver, influenced, subconsciously, by Nia's acts. Meanwhile, Cassandra confided in a friend over phone, whispering about the challenges of working for a man like him, her voice laced with exhaustion. Nia, overhearing, asked questions about racism, prompting Cassandra to explain in age-appropriate terms, planting seeds of awareness. The emotional stakes rose as Victor's test approached, the audience held in suspense, wondering if prejudice would prevail or if a child's grace could spark change. To expand this section, let's delve deeper into subplots. Victor recalls his youth, playing in segregated parks, hearing his father's derogatory remarks. These memories haunt him, blending with current events like a viral video of police misconduct. Cassandra's backstory unfolds. Her husband's death in a workplace accident, denied compensation due to bias, fueling her determination. Nia attends a community art class where she learns about cultural heritage, inspiring her drawings. The tension peaks as Victor sets multiple tests, leaving valuables out, but Nia ignores them, focused on her art. One evening, a storm rages outside, lightning illuminating the penthouse, mirroring internal turmoil. Victor, alone, stares at the drawings, a crack forming in his facade. This rising action builds layer upon layer, revealing injustices through detailed narratives, emotional depth, and societal context, keeping viewers engaged with escalating stakes. The moment arrived on a sultry afternoon. The penthouse bathed in the golden glow of late sunlight filtering through the windows, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the room. Victor, sprawled on the sofa, his eyes half closed in feigned sleep, heard Nia's soft footsteps approaching, each step a drumbeat in his chest. His pulse quickened, expecting to confirm his suspicions, to catch her in an act that would justify his biases and allow him to restore order. The room was silent, save for the distant rumble of thunder from an approaching storm, the air charged with electricity, both literal and metaphorical. Instead, he saw her tiptoe into the living room, clutching her sketchbook like a treasured secret. She didn't touch his belongings or sneak toward the valuables he had strategically left in view. A gold watch on the side table, a wallet peeking from his jacket pocket. Instead, she knelt quietly by the coffee table, placing a new drawing. Beside the framed photo of his late wife, a delicate sketch of two hands clasped, one light, one dark, surrounded by stars that seemed to twinkle on the paper. The drawing was intricate for a child, with careful shading and symbolic elements, the hands representing unity, the stars hope in darkness. Victor's breath caught, his pretense of sleep nearly shattered by the sight. Nia, oblivious to his gaze, hummed softly, a melody from an old gospel song her mother sang, her small frame radiating a kindness that clashed with every stereotype he'd held. The weight of his prejudice collided with the purity of her act, creating a storm of emotion within him, guilt washing over him like a wave, awe at her empathy, and a flicker of shame that threatened to unravel the walls he'd built around his heart. He froze, unable to move, his body rigid as if paralyzed by the revelation. In that instant, flashbacks flooded his mind. Eleanor's final days, her pleas for him to open his heart to the world, to use his wealth for good. He remembered ignoring her, focused on business. Now, a child's drawing echoed her words. The climax intensifies as Victor grapples internally, the storm outside mirroring his turmoil, rain pelting the windows, wind howling. He considers confronting Nia, firing Cassandra, but the drawing's message stops him. Nia lingers, adjusting the drawing, her face concentrated. Victor sees himself in her determination, a mirror to his own drive, but untainted by bias. The emotional peak hits when he realizes his test has failed, not because she passed, but because it exposed his flaws. Tears well in his eyes, unseen. The scene builds with sensory details. The scent of rain mixing with the penthouse's luxury aromas. The sound of Nia's hum fading as she leaves. Victor remains frozen, the climax a turning point of profound realization. To expand, explore Victor's internal monologue in depth. He recalls specific incidents of prejudice, denying promotions to minority employees, supporting policies that disadvantaged communities. Each memory stings, contrasted with Nia's innocence. Meanwhile, Cassandra senses something amiss, pausing her work, adding tension. The climax resolves in silence, Victor rising slowly, picking up the drawing, his hands trembling. This moment of vulnerability sets the stage for resolution, stunning in its intensity. In the wake of that quiet moment, Victor's world shifted irrevocably. He rose from the sofa, his test forgotten, and watched Nia slip back to the staff quarters, unaware of the impact she'd made. Instead of confrontation, he felt a stirring he hadn't known since his wife's passing, a call to be better to honor Eleanor's legacy. Over the following weeks, he began to dismantle the barriers he'd upheld, starting with small acts that snowballed into transformation. He spoke to Cassandra, not as an employer issuing orders, but as a person seeking understanding, inviting her to sit in the living room, a space previously off-limits. He learned about her struggles, the discrimination she faced in job searches, the fear for Nia's future in a biased world. Victor listened, really listened, his eyes opening to realities he had ignored. He funded an art program for Nia, enrolling her in prestigious classes at a local academy, where she flourished under mentors who recognized her talent. He provided Cassandra with a substantial raise and flexible hours, allowing her time for personal pursuits, and ended the bag checks, apologizing for the distrust. Beyond his home, Victor used his influence to advocate for diversity in his company, implementing training programs on unconscious bias and revising algorithms to ensure fairness. He donated millions to organizations fighting racial injustice, supporting scholarships for underrepresented youth and legal aid for discrimination cases. The penthouse, once a cold fortress, became a place of warmth, with Nia's drawings displayed proudly in the library, transforming it into a gallery of hope. Victor hosted gatherings for community leaders, fostering dialogues on equity. The city took notice. Stories of the billionaire's change spread through media outlets, stunning those who knew him as unyielding. Headlines read, "Tech Titan turns advocate," with interviews highlighting his journey. Nia's simple act of kindness, born from a child's heart, had cracked open a man's prejudice, proving that even the smallest gesture can ripple outward, inspiring others to reflect and act. This tale asks, what if one moment of grace could challenge the biases we carry? Look around. Where can your actions stun the world by building a bridge across divides? Encourage viewers to share their stories, fostering a community of change. To expand the resolution, detail Victor's steps, attending workshops, volunteering in Cassandra's neighborhood, mentoring Nia. Describe the impact on others, employees benefiting from new policies, protests gaining corporate support. End with a powerful statement on empathy's power.